Gallagher, who is a risk and insurance advisor. So we're here today to talk about psychosocial claims and how to manage and prevent them and a healthier workforce. Thanks very much for coming today. Sorry, here we go. So a February report from WorkSafe Australia found that mental health claims have risen by more than 35% since 2017. Whilst they're still only accounting for about 10% of serious workers' compensation claims, the lost time to employers for these injuries and the actual compensation themselves is quite worrying in regards to what we're looking at for the future. And we're only just touching the icebergs in regards to this. So at the end of the day, why does mental health make a difference? So 30% of Australian workers have reported ongoing mental health conditions. And 70% of Australian workers are exposed to at least one of 4 types of poor psychosocial job quality. So 70%, that's quite an alarming figure. And it's one that we need to take stock of and have a look to see where we can improve on those areas. So early intervention delivers the best outcomes and faster recovery. And mental health workplace policies enjoy higher engagement and lower turnover and stronger performance. So if you've got great policies in place, you're aware of what you need to be doing and the outcomes that you need to be achieving, you become an automatic employer of choice, which is great and gives you more selection when you're talking about actually onboarding and keeping employees. So mental health as a whole, we need to talk about that because I'm not here today just to talk about mental health within the workplace and it occurring within the workplace, but people actually entering the workforce having mental health conditions as well that we need to take stock of, that potentially people have ongoing issues that aren't related to their work and everyday life, but it's just everyday life for them. So statistically, 84% of workers experienced at least one mental health challenge over the past year, and 71% reported symptoms of stress. So, you know, their ongoing daily lives, they might have stress within their personal life, they might be anxious because that's just them, or they actually might be suffering from a mental health condition that you're not aware of. So 92% of workers considered it important to work for an organisation that values their emotional and psychological well-being. We all need to feel valued in our workplace and we all need to feel wanted in our workplace. That's what makes getting up and going to work every day something to do. If an employee is already suffering from a condition, they don't want that condition to be exacerbated by the workplace. So 77% of workers reported being satisfied with the mental health support provided by their employers. So that's a great number, but it's still not where we need to be as a workforce within Australian conditions. But 52% of employees feel that they do not receive enough support for their mental well-being from their employers. 52% is a significant number and one that is being looked at and reviewed by a lot of peak bodies, government organisations, and something that as employers we need to look at and help change. So the impact of workplace culture. A supportive workplace culture enhances employees' sense of belonging and psychological safety, of both of which are very, very vital to mental health. As I said, sometimes people are dealing with their own stressful environments away from the work situation. So if they feel like they've got a supportive environment where they're coming to work and their employer is understanding that perhaps they're not getting their tasks done because they've got issues elsewhere, and perhaps supporting them in that role, giving them a bit of space, they may actually help recover from what they're going through personally. I understand that you're a business and that you need to get the job done, but we're also living in a world and a culture where things are changing in that aspect. And we also need to understand we do need to support our most valuable asset, which is our employees. So 3 in 4 employees agree that work stress affects their sleep, and this sentiment being more pronounced in unhealthy workplaces. So there's a lot of very tired, agitated people out there, which we all know that for mental health, being tired is one of the factors that is causing issues. So it's important that as an employer, you're looking to help support those employees once again. So 62% of all mental health claims in Australia, unfortunately, are from healthcare and social assistance services. So we're talking directly to you as employers. We understand that you've got a lot of burnout within your industries, and that it's difficult what you do. You're there supporting the most vulnerable people in Australia. And you've got high staff turnovers, a lot of people unable to cope with the stress and anxiety of just doing their normal day-to-day jobs. We understand that as insurers, and also the Australian government is understanding that aspect as well. However, what it is doing is it's bringing the emphasis back onto the employer to what are you going to do to support your employees through. So psychosocial hazards within the workplace include job demands. We all know that we're all poor, time poor. We all have high work demands and things need to be done. We appreciate this, but we also understand that as an employer, you need to have a look at the demands that are being placed upon your employees, and perhaps look to see if you peel those back, or if there's any areas that potentially you can relieve some of that stress. Will that actually help with any mental health impacts that you may be causing your employee at the time? Poor support. So if your employees don't feel supported in their employment, in their place in employment, a couple of things are going to happen. They're either going to resign or start looking for a new job and resign, or you're not going to get the best out of your employee anyway. They're going to remain within your organisation, but not necessarily work to optimum levels either. So sometimes it is best to perhaps have those one-on-ones with people from a senior management perspective. How are you going? What can we do to help you? Is there anything that we haven't considered within your role that perhaps that we need to be looking at to support you in your role? Sometimes it's a conversation. It's not always actions. It's just the conversation that moves that forward, that then makes that employee feel more supported within their role. And if they're dealing with a lot of anxiety and stress within whatever area that they're working in, particularly with vulnerable people, within disability, within aged care, there potentially might be aggressive people in those fields that they're dealing with on a daily basis. Sometimes just having those conversations with people is the first step to recovery. And you may understand and get some insights into your employees that you didn't previously have, that, oh yes, that's something that we haven't considered. So poor organisational management is also another stress factor for a lot of employees. Unfortunately, if it's not coming together right from the top, and the message is not clear to your employees, then unfortunately sometimes the employees feel that stress and anxiety coming back onto them. So having very clear direction and guidelines that's been delivered right from the top down to your employees is one way to relieve that any potential psychosocial hazards that may be cropping up within the workforce. So we all like to be rewarded and we all like to be recognised for the work that we do. That is just human nature. Um, we understand that being within your sector, there's not a lot of money, and that unfortunately you cannot always compensate people the way that you would like to compensate them. However, sometimes recognition goes just as far. So maybe putting together a higher level aspect of what you can do to recognise people um, in regards to the work that they are doing, perhaps publicly recognising them within your office or within your businesses in any shape or form, sometimes can make people feel happy within their workplace place as well. So, however, if there isn't, they feel underpaid and they feel overworked and not recognised, that can be deemed to be a psychosocial hazard and one that a looming workers' compensation claim can be sitting on. So also, if a person is working remotely or isolated at work in any shape or form, so they're not potentially part of an office, their job may be going out and visiting people within the community. However, they don't necessarily have a point of contact where they're coming back to every day and they're not having that camaraderie that you get from working in a team environment. This can be another aspect of a psychosocial warning or hazard. Potentially looking at your staff and workforce. You know, some people are more than happy to work from home and actually don't want to be in the in an office and coming into the office. That's fine, but also asking those questions about how are you? Would you like to come to the office once a month? Once a quarter, once a year, what can we do to help you feel more included within the workplace? Obviously, violence and aggression is one that the community sector and social services deal with on a daily basis. It can be both physical and psychological harm. So there may be some people with clients that can become physical, but it's also just that horrible aggression and, potential dealing with some people that might be abusive towards staff, even though they're there, they're trying to help, that leads to burnout. And we recognise and understand that. However, having some clear policies available in regards to those times when your staff are going to become up against those members of the community that they're supporting for violence and aggression, what can you do to help those staff? Excuse me, bullying and harassment. So we do see a lot of bullying and harassment within workforce. Unfortunately, it's hard to prevent it from happening altogether. However, you do need to be seen to be having policies and procedures to prevent it where you can. It's not a very nice environment for people to have to come to work every day to feel harassed and bullied by their team members or management or anything along those lines. So very clear guidelines in regards to that. So conflict or poor workplace relationships and interactions. Having those one-on-ones once again with staff on a regular basis can help pick up where they are starting to feel that they're having conflicts with staff members. Sometimes a lot of language is unwritten. And unfortunately, people, might get a bit of a bee in their bonnet because they think somebody has said something to them that they've taken the opposite to what the way it should have been delivered. It's very easy to pick up on those things and try and put out the fire before it becomes a major risk and a major psychosocial hazard for the future. These are all areas that can lead to that workers' compensation claim, which can lead to ongoing investigations and greater premiums in regards to these policies moving forward if we've got employees that are lodging stress-related claims. So the business case for mental wellbeing. So redesigning your work environments and supportive leadership is key. At the end of the day, we know that for every dollar invested within mental health programs, $2.30 comes back in a higher productivity. So, when we're all having a bad day, we've had bad clients, things have happened that we don't really, outside of our control. However, we're feeling very upset in relation to the environment that we're working in, perhaps. If we feel supported in that environment, you're going to get a greater output out of your employees at the end of the day. Once again, we all need to understand and take into consideration that people may have their own things going on away from the workplace, and that sometimes just having those conversations with people can actually help move them forward. Now, I also understand that there are people that will immediately jump to psychosocial claims when they are being performance managed within the workplace. That is obviously a different scenario from what we're talking about. But you, as leaders within your industry, having good policies and procedures in place and having sat down and thought about this will actually help prevent those claims from escalating and proceeding further. However, if somebody can actually prove that they feel that some of those areas that I've just been through are present within their workforce, it is harder to prevent those claims from occurring. So, excuse me, identifying and assessing the risks of harmful behaviours. What can your organisation do to prevent claims? So I've taken this directly off WorkSafe Australia's website, and so there are links in regards to people at work and survey tools. It is beneficial for you to be looking and building your policies around these areas. So once again, consulting with your workers, look for different hazards within your workplace. So you look for hazards like tripping and other areas. What are those other hazards that potentially you can look beyond that may be a mental health, may bring up a mental health condition or exacerbate a mental health condition? Looking at your workloads, looking at, are people getting along in the office? Are there internal fighting going on? What's happening there? Do our staff and employees believe that they're actually getting the right message from management and actually are backing what the management is delivering in relation to our direction, your direction for your employees? So you can use surveys and tools. So a lot of employers do survey their employees on a basis of no identification whatsoever. So you can do that. That's one of the most useful tools that you'll actually ever be able to do, is in relation to finding out how your employees actually feel. And if it's anonymous, they actually might open up to you. Once you get those surveys back, then you can sit down and go, well, gee, we really didn't understand that we had issues in these areas, and these are the areas that we need to look at and to try and make our employees a little bit more stable and happier within the workplace. So review the available information that you have at your discretion. Have there been workers' compensation claims in the past? Is it because it's a particular manager that potentially the staff are not gelling with and they feel perhaps victimised by? What can you do to assist that manager through and potentially prevent any claims that are coming through. Looking at overtime records, time off. Is there a staff that are actually taking a lot of time off? And is there a valid reason behind that, or is it because they're burnt out, exhausted, and there's something brewing underneath? So have ways for your workers to report and encourage reporting. Okay. So treat every worker's concern seriously and with respect. Don't dismiss anything that is raised with you, because that will just brew further behind the scenes. Treat it with respect. If they come to you with a concern, you need to review what is being said and then come back with an antiquated response that is going to make them feel comfortable in regards to what is happening. So you don't always have to answer on the spot. You can say, thanks very much for coming to me with your concerns. I will look into this and then I'll come back to you. It's up to you then to look at reviewing that from moving forward. Excuse me. So identify other hazards present and consider them together. So is there any changes to your environment? So this isn't just something that you do once and that is the end of it. You should be looking to review and update your policies and procedures regarding mental health on a regular basis. So has something changed within the working environment? Are there new employees? What's happening? So with change, this all needs to be looked at and reviewed. So it's very easy to get bogged down in that change, looking at the direction moving forward, but not considering the people that you're bringing forward within that journey and how they're feeling about that change. So consider how long and how often and how severely workers are exposed to hazards. So, once again, you're working with vulnerable people, you're working a lot of burnout within this industry. What can you do? Sometimes just asking those questions and making incredibly small changes can sometimes help you. If somebody is feeling that they're not being listened to, that can bring about problems in relation to psychosocial claims as well. So it is incredibly important to validate anybody that has come to you with any concerns. But don't just wait for somebody to come to you. Go and have discussions with people. So controlling harmful behaviours. So you're trying to eliminate anything within the workforce that potentially can be construed as a harmful behaviour. So, locking up offices where people don't feel threatened. They feel that potentially that client that is abusive may come into the office and they're not feeling safe. Having those security measures in place to give the pretense that that person is safe. You've done everything that you possibly can within your power to make that person feel safe. That can help alleviate stress and anxiety and potentially ongoing mental health issues moving forward. You can increase visibility in the workplace by using semi-opaque glass for offices to improve natural surveillance. People are going into quiet rooms and having a cry. I understand that that's up to them, but you may realize that that is happening on a regular basis and perhaps start addressing those areas. It may not be work related, it might be something else. However, what you want to do is try and help those people through. So implement behaviour plans for clients with high needs and history of violence. So once again, and talk to your employees about those behaviour plans. So they're feeling safe. They feel like, yep, we've got a strategy in place for this particular person. We understand that this particular person may be violent and aggressive. These are the plans that we have in place to try and prevent those behaviours from occurring. I understand they're not always preventable. However, there's strategies in place. Reducing wait times for services, so transferring calls to other areas. Like if somebody receives all the telephone calls and there's no other backup for that person, is there an opportunity to be able to introduce a new person to be able to bring some of those calls to, so that person's not feeling stressed on the telephone, trying to get to all the calls, being abused because they can't get to them. And manage other psychosocial hazards. So high job demands, once again, behaving poorly in the workplace. If you're seeing any behaviors that are not acceptable and people are feeling excluded, bullied, harassed, obviously they're major red flags for psychosocial claims. Reviewing your control measures, once again, I've mentioned it previously, it has to be reviewed. It cannot just be something that you sit down, implement any policies and procedures and just leave it at that. It has to be an ongoing. There are changes to WHO's legislations across Australia and they are mandatory changes. Now, in Victoria, we are just seeing the introduction of mandatory psychosocial procedures for employees in Victoria. I believe that eventually this will be rolled out across Australia within each state or territory, so it will not be just confined to Victoria. Sooner or later, we are going to start seeing things like that happening here within ACT as well, and also New South Wales. It is going to become mandatory that you look at these policies and procedures moving forward and try to prevent these claims from occurring and manage your employees' mental health. So driving a good culture is from the top, okay? So leadership is the front line. So you're making the first step by joining this webinar today and being interested in what you can do to help your employees moving forward. So be empathetic, it lowers claims and it's good for you when you're not having to constantly engage staff. That's a pain for everybody and it costs a bomb. So if your employees are happy, you're an employer of choice, then ultimately at the end of the day, people are going to want to be with you. You're going to get higher productivity and we're going to be looking at good mental health for your employees moving forward. Oops, sorry. Just went backwards in regards, sorry, just bring that back up. So training your managers. So your managers are the people that are going to be responsible ultimately at the end of the day. So from the committee board perspective, all right the way through to the executives and to the managers, this is something that everybody needs to take part in. So safety begins with trust, not policies. I know I said policies and procedures. However, you've got to get the employees' trust. Management has to get the employees' trust. So things you can do, once again, coming back to regular check-ins with your employees. Ensuring that the mental health resources are well published and easily accessible. So under your employee toolkit, you may have links to some mental health associations, just in case somebody needs them. Once again, it doesn't always have to be, mental health condition doesn't have to be derived from the place of employment. They may already be carrying that. However, you need to be aware of the fact that that person has ongoing issues so it doesn't spiral into a workers' compensation claim because they don't feel supported with their ailment. Once again, provide all your managers with all the information that they need to help assist them through. Implementing peer support is a great thing. Not everybody likes to talk to a manager. They shut down. They feel that don't really want to have that discussion. But, perhaps sometimes if you've got two employees that gel together, they can help support each other. But it needs to be directed also too from the management that, you know, hello, Sharon over there is not having a great day. Just wondering, if we know that you've got a great relationship with her. Would you be able to have a chat with her? You know, that's just the start. It's something that it is helping everybody. And there are ways to go around it too. So you can, from an employer perspective, and I understand that there may be some smaller organisations that are on this Teams call today. You can look for mental health training for executives and staff as well. Potentially, when we're talking about larger organisations, you can actually, in certain circumstances, get that training paid for by your workers' compensation insurer. So there's ways that you can foster that relationship from the top all the way down. You know, check your culture, make sure that it's not toxic, make sure that people are happy and that their well-being is being taken care of. So start with open conversations about mental health. It's not something that needs to be put into the closet anymore. I think our society has progressed enough now that it's not something that we should whisper about. It's something that we should say, this is a disease. And unfortunately, there are some of our colleagues that have mental health concerns that we need to take into consideration in the place of employment. Review all your job roles. Are we loading up some people too much because they're a great employee and they just trow through? That's wonderful. However, those great employees can get burnout very, very quickly. So talking to the employee, talking about expectations, perhaps in some way looking to help remove some of that load in certain circumstances where it's available, even if it's a very minor change, that can help. So you need to provide the managers with the training once again and actively promote and normalise the use of support services and wellbeing resources. So, you know, people within, there's members obviously within ATCOS that are work within the mental health areas. Actively promote those people back to your employees and recognise and reward behaviours that build a positive and inclusive workplace for you. Okay. If somebody is really going out of their way to say, let's go and have lunch or let's bring in pizza and try and get everybody, the team in together, recognize that. It's just a small little thing by saying, thanks very much. We really appreciate you doing that. It's a great workplace. Everybody really enjoyed the pizzas. Something very, very minor like that can actually assist you. So what are insurers doing? We've talked a lot about what you can do as employers, but what are insurers doing? So we're finding that a lot of insurers are turning to AI when it comes to psychosocial claims. So they're looking at the claim and they actually got programs in place to make sure that they're looking at the biological, psychological, and social risk factors of that place of employment. So there's a lot that they can sort of come in and review in regards to your place of employment when considering this claim. So, you know, high risk claims where it's proven that an employee has suffered a psychosocial claim as a direct result of their place of employment will be treated accordingly and they will be managed at the highest depth. The lower ones, not as much, but that's a little bit of a trap when it comes to the scheme and, you know, particularly when we're dealing with case managers. Sometimes they're not always on top of their claims and things can fall through the cracks. So it's important that you understand that you need to be involved within your workers' compensation claim right from day one. That doesn't mean that you're ringing up an employee and saying, when are you coming back to work? What's going on? What can we do to help you? You need to give that person space, particularly if they've presented with a stress-related claim. Allow your insurers to deal with that claim, but you also need to be ensuring that you are regularly corresponding with the insurer regarding that claim as well. So you have 48 hours to notify your insurer if you've been advised that an employee has a psychosocial claim. That is the legislation. If you do not notify within 48 hours after you've been notified, you can it can be construed that you've discriminated against the insurer, and as a direct result, they will not pay lost wages due to the time that you've withheld the claim. So it's very, very important that you actually get that out there. Once the notification has gone through, it will be investigated. The insurer then has 28 days to accept or decline the claim. Now, I do see a lot of claims that do come through where an employee has been counselled in regards to their performance. And then all of a sudden we have a psychosocial claim. It is important that we manage those claims accordingly, and that employee will receive benefits until such time as the claim is accepted or declined by the insurer. Now, if there is evidence that you are performance managing somebody, your insurer needs to know that. So don't just submit the early notification of claim and leave it at that. Your insurer needs to understand that you have been working with this employee in relation to their performance. And then potentially that has led to a claim. That is manageable, but you cannot then ring up the employee and say, I've been performance managing you. How dare you do this? This is not okay. That's just bullying and harassment. It needs to be done with delicate hands and away from the employee. However, any information that you do have in regards to that employee is going to be beneficial and will go towards the outcome of that particular claim. So please make sure that you do ask who the case manager is, find out who it is, have that chat, particularly where there has been some performance issues that have been raised. You need to make sure that you've got good return to work plans in place for that employee. So that employee may get a medical certificate that says that they can't work from the office, they can only work from home. If you're able to facilitate that, those working conditions, then that's exactly what you need to do. If that person can come back to the office for 2 days a week, they're usually a 5-day-a-week employee, it would be good if you can facilitate that. Now, we understand that, once again, this is a business and that you may not be able to facilitate that employee coming back into the office 2 days a week because you just don't have any work for them. However, if we can facilitate people to get back to work earlier than later, if a claim is accepted, it actually moves the claim along better than what it would be for somebody sitting at home feeling isolated, that nobody cares about me and this is the reason why I'm in this spot in the first place. So if you can work with the insurers and your broker to discuss these issues and return to work, that would be the best outcome for you. So despite substantial growth in mental injury claims over the past decade, they still capture only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the true scale of mental health in the workplace. And that's quoted by Monash University. So it's a little bit scary that this is where we're sitting in life. And I truly believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, this will just going to be common course, that these training sessions are going to be everywhere. it is something that we're going to have to start talking about moving forward, and something that we're all need to have a hand in, essentially, to have a great workplace. So thanks very much for allowing me to talk to you today, and I'd just like to take any questions if there are any. Nobody's got any questions about workers' compensation or how to handle claims when they come through? No? Okay.
Sorry if you can hear that background noise. If anyone has any questions, please unmute yourself or use the chat function. I've just popped in a quick evaluation form for the training, so please let us know how you found the info session, so we can pass on that feedback and cater better to all you guys. In the meantime, if no one's got questions right now, I'd just like to say that we have another upcoming info session on the 12th of November on superannuation essentials for community sector workers. That is also on our website. You can register via our website. Yeah, if you have any questions, please let us know now before we wrap up.
I'd just like to say too that if anybody does have any questions that come about at a later stage, by all means, please contact me. So Leanne will distribute a copy of the slide deck to you, which has my details on it. The advice that we give you is free. There's no charge for that advice. So I'm more than happy for anybody to give me a call and have that discussion. I can direct you to, some areas that potentially may assist you with your organisation and reviewing mental health. But mental health starts from the top. So you'll need to look at your situations and potentially what you can do to help strengthen that environment that you have and potentially stop any harmful events from happening.
Well, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and thank you so much, Gail, for facilitating this discussion and information session. Penelope will be sending out the slides and a link to the YouTube video and the evaluation, so please watch out for that. If there's nothing else, I might just wrap up today and say thank you. Oh, I see someone's typing. I'm not sure if that's a question. I'll just thank yous coming through. Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone. Hope you all have a good day. All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.